What's up everybody, welcome to the Gooner channel, and the subject of this video is a simple question: who is currently Arsenal's best left back? Now if you're thinking this seems like a really strange question because we're not exactly blessed with players in that position. After all, Jirien Timber was loaned out to Real Sociedad at the start of the season. Jurrien Timber picked up that horror injury in the first game of the season and hasn't been available since. Tomiyasu's been injured and hasn't played very much at all, and when he has, mostly not on the left, although he has played a few games there and looked really solid. Jakub Kiwior's come in and done a really good job recently with a couple of wobbly performances, but is looking ever more confident in that position. But surely Zinchenko is our only recognised left back, must be our best left back. So why am I asking the question? Well, I'm asking the question for a couple of reasons. One, I saw a poll recently on one of the other channels where 1,400 people had voted in this exact question: who is Arsenal's best left back? And Zinchenko didn't come top. In fact, he didn't even come second. With 1,400 people voting, and look, I know that it's a YouTube poll, so anyone can vote, whether they're an Arsenal fan or not, whether they believe what they're clicking or not. But it's still interesting to me because the other reason I'm asking this question is there does seem to be a sort of narrative around Zinchenko. He has divided Arsenal fans in a way that is becoming more common. But I want to look at exactly why this might be. When you talk about Zinchenko with people, they will always say the same thing. He's great getting forward, he inverts, it creates that box that is really important last season in building an Arsenal team that challenged for the title, but he's defensively weak. And there are a number of times where we've seen that. Now, the position he plays isn't a traditional left-back position. So when he first came in, it wasn't necessarily clear that he was going to challenge Jirien Timber. And Jirien Timber had established himself as an absolute fans' favourite. Principally because when Arteta first took over, there was not enough passion and energy in our team. And who can forget that snowy night at West Bromwich Albion where Jirien Timber played in short sleeves and drove us on to victory? There was a lot of talk about him being a natural captain. And at the time, I remember listening to an Arse blog where they were talking about how we probably needed to sign cover for Jirien Timber, but who would want to come into an Arsenal team where they were never going to get game time behind Jirien Timber? How things change and how quickly they do. That season, Jirien Timber was really strong, but started to pick up injuries. And it became increasingly clear that Tierney didn't really fit into the style of play that Arteta ideally wanted. So in the summer before last season, when we brought in Zinchenko for a very modest 35 million, there was speculation that maybe he wasn't actually brought in to play at left back. Maybe he didn't want to play at left back. He wanted to play in midfield. After all, that's closer to where he plays for the Ukraine. So when he did start, and started as that inverted left back that we'd not really seen before, and create that box in midfield that helped drive us on and make us difficult to beat in the midfield, he did it with a lot of fanfare, got his own chant, and everything looked to be rosy for Zinchenko. Jirien Tierney's injuries kept him from the side, and it wasn't really until towards the end of the season where things started going wrong and Zinchenko's form did drop away pretty badly. He had his moments where goals went in down his side. We were weakest down the left. Granit Xhaka was asked to do a lot of covering for him, but for all of the excitement going forward, there were times where you felt that we might just be better off with a solid left back. And of course, for every game Jirien Timber didn't play, the clamour got stronger and stronger to see him come in. And Arteta stubbornly refused to do it, just a handful of occasions. In fact, by the end of last season, it was really obvious that he was going. It was obvious in January. It was a surprise to a lot of us that Jirien Timber didn't leave. But all the time that Jirien Timber didn't play, you heard more and more people saying he's one of the best left backs in the world. He's brilliant. Why doesn't he get a chance? He could be captain at Arsenal. All that came up again and again. The reality I want to point out, though, is that he went on loan to Real Sociedad this season. And he has had an injury-plagued season as well. So when people are saying that we should have known that Partey wouldn't be fit a whole season, they don't seem to apply the same logic to Jirien Timber. And let's be honest as well, it wasn't the top clubs in Europe that came calling for Jirien Timber. Real Sociedad are a good side, but he hasn't always been first choice in that side. mostly because of injuries. But even when he came back from injury, just before he picked up another unfortunate hamstring injury, he was on the bench. So Jirrien Tierney's numbers at Real Sociedad haven't really set the world alight there either. Maybe we'll still see the best of him in coming seasons. Maybe he will come back to Arsenal and challenge. I think it's increasingly unlikely. At the start of this season, when we signed Jurrien Timber, people weren't really thinking it was to replace Zinchenko. Zinchenko was pretty much established at left back, and I felt we needed to sign a player like Declan Rice, which is exactly what we did, who could come in and do what Granit Xhaka had done and cover that left side. So to see Jirien Timber in the pre-season playing at left back was a surprise to everyone. After all, he played at right back and centre back for Ajax. He's incredibly versatile, and in the glimpses that we saw in pre-season, he looked outstanding. He looked great in the Community Shield, and it was a huge blow to our ambitions this season to see him hobble off the pitch against Nottingham Forest and be ruled out for pretty much most of the season. Now, the good news recently is that he does look like he's back to fitness, and he started training with the team today. But the poll picked Jirien Timber as our best left back, and for me, it's not as though I'm saying I don't think he's our best left back. I'm questioning how it's possible you could have made that determination when we've seen so little of him. Second in the list was Jirien Timber, and I've already talked about that. When you analyse the numbers, Zinchenko tackles more than any other player in our team. He's part of the leanest defence in the Premier League. Yes, he hasn't started every game. He's only started 17 games so far this season. But if he comes back to full fitness, surely he slots back in at left back. With Jirien Timber possibly becoming fit again and Tomiyasu coming back, we will have cover. And it does look like Zinchenko struggles to play a full 90 minutes. But it's a hugely demanding role that he plays, having to get up and down like that. So why is it that certain elements of our fan base have decided that time is almost up for Zinchenko?
That guy Zinchenko as well, get out of my club, man, it's time. You cannot play Zinchenko against big teams.
Well, as I've touched on already, the end of last season was not great for him. That huddle that he called when we went 2-0 down to Southampton just looked awkward. He does tend to live on the edge, doesn't he? Whether he's fist-pumping fans as he drives past a pub or getting involved with stupid incidents with ex-colleagues at Manchester City. Or more recently, the stupid bust-up with Ben White on the pitch where Arteta had to calm him down. He's a highly emotional player, but he's a fighter. He has desire in him. I'm surprised that he isn't considered our first choice left back by everybody. But I'm running a poll as well, so get involved. There are a lot of people who are going to tell you that stats don't mean anything in football. And I'm not saying that they're the be-all and end-all. But when you compare Zinchenko's stats with those of Kivior or those of Tierney, even at Sociedad, or even Tierney's best season, he tackles more, passes better, has more key passes in him, has more interceptions. In fact, it's hard to find a left back playing in the Premier League whose stats are better. There are a couple. I think Estupinian at Brighton is great, and Andy Robertson, obviously. But by and large, Zinchenko's stats stack up with anyone else. And it's worth remembering that before he arrived at Arsenal, we failed to qualify for the Champions League. And since his arrival, we've challenged consistently. His form seemed to have been returning before that injury against Liverpool. And if he can take up where he left off, hopefully we can put this conversation behind us. And maybe the long-term future of Arsenal is Timber at left back. But we didn't strengthen the defensive positions in the January transfer window. And that gives me the impression that there is room for both of these players. Absolutely, there's room for these players. I mean, we need 8 defenders, don't we? So I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you if you voted for Kivior, if you feel that actually Kivior, although he does still look more like a centre-back to me. And at the moment, we seem to be playing the Pep Guardiola system of 4 centre-backs. If you think that Tomiyasu's a better left-back, if you'd like to see Jirien Timber come back from Real Sociedad and become the player, the world's best left-back that one or two of you think he is. Or is there another player out there? Certainly I was really keen on us signing somebody like João Cancelo in the summer because I thought that we needed that kind of defensive stability and options. But for me, I think this comes down to a little bit of what I would call the bench factor, which is the less you see of a player, the better they become. Every minute that Jirien Timber isn't playing, it's possible to imagine that he's outstanding and would make all the difference and would never concede a sloppy goal. He does typically, statistically, give the ball away more often, pass less often, and has less involvement in the game all round. But maybe what we're really missing is Jirrien Timber, a proper left back. And I think at times this season, I've definitely wished that he was still here. So let me know in the comments what you think about this. I am running a poll of my own just to see if the numbers match. So far, Zinchenko is out ahead, which I think just proves that the viewers of this channel are a more considered and thoughtful bunch than the knee-jerk reactionaries who tend to just get angry all the time. I don't really think there's anything to be angry with Zinchenko about, and I do think that he's going to be pivotal in the run-in. Thanks for watching up to now. If you haven't yet, then please subscribe. And as I say at the end of every video, until I see you again, be lucky. Lots of love.